Today, we're going to talk about goals. What does goal setting have to do with resilience? When setting your own goals, how can you set yourself up for success? What makes a good goal anyway? And what did the A in SMART goals originally stand for? These questions and more are answered in this video. Hello, and welcome back to Black, White, Gray, Yellow. My name is Diana, and this channel is all about communication, connection, and resilience. This is the fourth video in my series on resilience, and the second on a specific skill. If you haven't seen it yet, be sure to check out my last video on looking for the good, a resilience skill that counteracts stress by building positive emotion and fighting the negativity bias. As a quick background on me, I'm a Master Resilience Trainer in the United States Army National Guard. I also served 13 months as the Resilience Program Coordinator at my state's Joint Force Headquarters. This series is based on the skills taught as part of that program, but replacing proprietary material with references to open source research and books. So, for everyone who asked me if I could share the material so they could teach it outside the military, now you can. Now, I'm recording this in December, and with the year drawing to a close and many people I know, myself included, starting to think about New Year's resolutions, this seems like the right time to start talking about goal setting, which is one of our resilience skills. In terms of the 6 competencies that resilient people have, check out this video after this one if you haven't seen that yet. Goal setting builds self-regulation. It helps us control our thoughts, emotions, and impulses by giving us something longer term to focus on instead, ideally something we care about and care about achieving. Now, goal setting is a very broad topic that many people have written about, so it isn't something we're going to be able to cover in one short video. So, rather than making a single video that's so long it's intimidating, I'm going to break it up into several shorter videos, just like we might break up a larger goal into a series of smaller goals. And today, for this first video on goal setting, I just want to talk about what makes a good goal. For that, I'm actually going to deviate away from the Master Resilience training material to go over the very popular SMART goal framework. The acronym SMART was first proposed for use with goals or objectives by a man named George T. Doran, then president of a management consultancy based in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, in a short article in the November 1981 issue of Management Review, linked in the description. Since then, the acronym has been adopted, modified, and applied to contexts far and wide of corporate management, and several of the letters in the acronym now stand for a variety of ideas, but there is a common theme among the varietals, and we'll discuss at least the major ones here today. In 1981, George Doran defined the acronym to be specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, and time-bound. I'm betting at least one of those letters isn't what you've heard before. Now, I've been part of more than one program that spent a lot of time talking about goals, including the S.M.A.R.T program, and my favorite variation on the acronym is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. I'll go over both versions, keeping in mind how this relates back to resilience. In pretty much all versions of the SMART acronym, the first 2 things a SMART goal should be are specific and measurable. Now, these are not the same, but they are linked, and I often hear them defined in very similar ways, so let me try to clarify what each one means separately. Saying, I want to lose weight is technically measurable, but not specific. You would make this goal specific by indicating how much weight you want to lose. For example, I want to lose 25 pounds. Measurable also means that you have the tools to be able to definitively determine whether or not the goal has been achieved. So in contrast, if your goal is to drop your body mass index or BMI by 5%, but you do not have the tools or access to the tools to measure BMI, then this goal, while specific, is not measurable for you. Most people understand that goals need to be measurable so that you can hold yourself accountable to them. So measurability is about accountability. It helps keep you honest and actually moving toward an objectively measurable change. In many instances, it allows you to track progress along the way as well. Being able to objectively hold yourself accountable to your goals in turn helps keep you motivated, and being motivated to stick to your goals helps keep you resilient in the face of adversity. We'll talk a lot more about motivation in our next video on goal setting. But what about specificity? Why is I want to lose 25 pounds a better goal than just I want to lose weight? Well, here's my take. Specificity is important because, in this example, you could lose half a pound and still have lost weight, but not feel good about the result. Being specific allows us to pinpoint exactly what result will allow us to feel that we actually achieved something. Once again, when we're talking about resilience, that sense of achievement is hugely important for motivation, which helps us stay strong and resilient in the pursuit of more goals. Let's take this a step further. Maybe you're worried about losing weight and gaining it back again, so maybe the specific goal that works for you is that you want the scale to consistently read a certain number. Maybe you're wanting to lose fat while gaining muscle mass, so you won't necessarily lose weight at all, but you want to fit into a specific pant size. Any of these goals is measurable, but any may be more or less motivating than the others for you. When specifying your goal, think about how you want achieving that goal to make you feel and what you would specifically have to accomplish to get that feeling. So I'm arguing, while measurability is about accountability, specificity is about a sense of accomplishment. I also want to add that typically there is a limit to how specific we want our goals to be. We still want to leave room for flexibility and adaptation. In most cases, for example, you wouldn't specify how to accomplish your goal as part of the goal, even though this would be a way to make that goal that much more specific. Let me clarify what I mean by this. In my experience, if the how is important, then the how is itself the real goal. For example, maybe you have an idea that you will accomplish your weight loss goal by sticking to a specific program, in which case you could include that in your goal. I will lose 25 pounds by sticking to this program for a year. But then that bisects your attention. If the goal is to lose weight, then the how shouldn't necessarily matter. If the goal is to stick to the program, then let that be the sole goal and allow the weight loss to be a byproduct of accomplishing that goal. As an aside, this is often a great way to trick yourself into accomplishing a desired result by setting a goal to focus on from which the result you really want is just a byproduct. By focusing only on actions that you can control, knowing that the less controllable result is likely to follow, you're much less likely to sabotage yourself with those ultimately desired results. When I was door-to-door salesman, we talked about this a lot. If you do a good job and talk to enough people, the sales will come. But if I focused too much on selling, I lost my indifference and no one wanted to buy from me. To use a different example, maybe you want to read more books next year. You could make the goal more specific by quantifying how many books you want to read. Now, it would be even more specific to say exactly which books you want to read next year, but that could also paint you into a corner. Maybe you had planned to read all the Harry Potter books, but then you lose interest. Is there a reason why you need to finish that book series specifically, or was your goal to just read a book series, or even just any 7 books? I bring this up to say that I want you to be as specific as you need to be to clarify exactly what goal will make you feel accomplished. Okay, so as I said earlier, George Doran originally wrote the A as assignable, which makes sense from a management perspective. When working on a goal or objective with a group or team, you want to make sure each step in the process is something that can be assigned to a specific person. So in a sense, this is more specificity. Who is doing what? Let's say, for example, that maybe your family has a group goal of keeping the house or apartment cleaner next year. After specifying which chores need to be done and how to measure whether they're being done well, you would be able to assign specific tasks to different people. Maybe one person is responsible for picking up and taking out the trash, while another is responsible for dishes and a third person for laundry. Maybe each person is responsible for cleaning up their own areas, which can be defined. However, if we're talking about a personal goal, like a New Year's resolution, say, then your task assignments are all likely to be for yourself, which makes this aspect of the SMART goals kind of moot. So in some versions of the SMART acronym, the A stands for Attainable or Achievable. Attainable or achievable means within reasonable expectation of what's possible, given available resources, in Doran's words, and we're specifically talking about what's possible for you. Let's take reading books as an example, or maybe you prefer to watch movies. While it is certainly possible to read 100 books or watch 100 movies in a year, depending on who you are and what books you're reading or how much time you have, if the books you read or movies you watch are long and the only time you have to read or watch them is an hour before bed, then 10 or 20 books or movies may be a much more realistic number, maybe less. This is often where people talk about making sure goals, while still attainable, are also still challenging. So sometimes the A stands for ambitious or aggressive. I've heard it argued that if you hit your goals 100% of the time, then you aren't setting difficult enough goals. On the other hand, failing to achieve a goal also undermines your confidence to achieve the next one too. Bringing this back to our conversation about resilience and motivation, I think a good goal is one that is challenging enough to make us work for it, but attainable enough that we are still motivated to put in that work. Now, while Doran used assignable instead of achievable, he still had this concept in his R word, realistic, which refers to the same idea. However, if we are using achievable instead, we are free to use a different word for R, perhaps for a concept that Doran didn't think of. My personal favorite R is relevant, which directly leads to the question, relevant to what? This could be relevant to the company values or relevant to a larger overarching goal if we're talking about SMART sub-goals. But personally, I like goals that are relevant to your core values. We'll talk a lot more about core values in another of our goal-setting videos, but if you already know your core values, then choosing goals that can leverage them will build significantly greater motivation to achieve them. And again, we'll talk a lot more about motivation in our next video on goal setting. Finally, while the exact wording varies, most versions of the SMART goal framework use the T to refer to some time boundary on the goal. I've already slipped this into each of our examples above by framing the goals as New Year's resolutions, assuming 1 year is the time frame for each goal, but of course any time frame can do. The idea is, while saying, I want to lose 25 pounds is both specific and mostly measurable, and possibly attainable and relevant to your values. You lose a certain amount of measurability if there is no time limit on the goal. If there is no time limit, then there is no pass or fail. There's only pass and haven't passed yet. Now, maybe this is very motivating to you, in which case, go for it. When it comes to my most ambitious goals, I like to think of Thomas Edison's famous quote regarding his work toward the invention of the light bulb. I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that don't work. However, in many more cases, being in a perpetual state of having not achieved the goal yet with no risk of failure because there's always next year or the like, again undermines our motivation. It turns out humans are motivated by deadlines. There's a ton of research on this. I'll put a few links in the description. So adding that time element to your goals, whether a year or 6 weeks or by the end of the day, helps set you up for success. So that's it for this video on SMART goals. In the next video on goal setting, we'll look at why some goals are easier to achieve than others and how to make goals that we find more motivating. If you want a notification as soon as that video comes out, click the bell icon or subscribe for quick access to this channel. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and tell me in the comments one of your SMART goals. Until next time, my name is Diana, and this has been Black, White, Gray, Yellow.